welcome to SVG TV's news for Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves and his delegation returned to the States this afternoon after securing St. Vincent and the Grenadines' bid for the presidency of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, at its 7th summit in Argentina. The other members of SVG's delegation to the summit were Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, Kisa Peters, SVG's ambassador to Venezuela, His Excellency Gareth Bino, SVG's former ambassador to Venezuela, Andres Wickham, and the Prime Minister's security, Kendall Horn. Having received unanimous support for the PRO temporal presidency of CELAC, SVG is now the first CARICOM state to achieve the post since CELAC was founded in 2011.
Argentina, and I want to rely on everyone to help us in this very important task, and all the organizations, the allied agencies, those which we have heard from, and those which we have not heard from. Things are not falling apart. The center is holding, and we are not just having passion. We have commitment, and that's very important. I shall be saying this ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one least traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you very much. I have a plane to catch. I bang the gavel and we go home.
After assuming the presidency of the 33-member hemisphere grouping, PM Gonsalves hosted a press conference in Argentina where he was asked to share his views on several issues affecting member states.
I would like to hear your views on the systematic violation of human rights in Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. What is your opinion on this?
Well, you will have to provide me with,
I'm told
you'll have to provide me with the evidence relating to systematic, that's the adjective, then the noun violation of human rights. We can have a discussion on that all evening. This is a matter, whatever issues in any particular country. I begin from the starting point. I respect each country in addressing their own internal affairs.
Of course, it is my understanding that human rights are not a matter falling within the sovereign scope of each country, and of course there are reports pointing to these systematic violations of human rights. Actually,
I've seen reports. I've seen reports to the contrary. Each of those countries has a legal system, and those legal systems can be accessed. I have to catch a plane. I want to get my plane to go to Miami and then get home.
Tengo que tomar un avión.
I really appreciate you. I will come back and see you in Argentina.
Muchas gracias.
And congratulations on the World Cup. I love you.
Volver a Argentina. Felicitaciones por el Mundial. Los quiero.
On Tuesday, 33 countries of CELAC signed the Buenos Aires Declaration, through which they pledged to deepen integration, climate action, democratic institutions, and multilateralism. Ceremony here at the Argyle International Airport, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Kisa Peters described CELAC as a big deal and said SVG assuming the presidency of the grouping is also a big deal.
And I cannot put into words how I felt when during the course of yesterday, whether it was a head of state or a head of government or the foreign minister, however the country was represented in the meeting yesterday, that one by one, each country gave their support to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And one of the things that struck me was something that was said in one of our bilaterals while we were in Argentina, where it was said that it's not the size of the country, it's the leadership that counts. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as Dion previously said, we have shown that we have the capacity and the capability to lead and to do so effectively and efficiently. And we are able to do so with the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, who has done his part in taking diplomacy higher for St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Peters told those in her ministry that they have put in the groundwork to ensure SVG secured the presidency, and now that this has been achieved, they have a lot of work to do.
We're not going to be naive about it, but I know, based on the work ethic of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I've spoken about this ministry many times, they are hardworking, and I know that once we work together with the personnel who will be housed at the CELAC Secretariat, that we will do exceedingly well. And I want the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to start paying attention to CELAC and the work that we will be doing to advocate for the interest of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have a number of issues that we intend to push and we intend to build from our predecessor, Argentina, things like climate change, access to concessional financing for development. And we intend to interact with various partners in an effort to develop and to raise the standard of living for all 33 members of the CELAC grouping. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big deal, and we need the encouragement from the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well. And as I said, I know we are going to do exceptionally well. Stay tuned to CELAC, because you will be hearing about CELAC a lot more from today.
In his address to the gathering, Prime Minister Dr. Afghan Safs noted that CELAC is made up of member states with different ideological and philosophical positions, and that is out of a diversity of ideas and perspectives that they all realized that they have a common set of circumstances and challenges that they have to address in the interest of uplifting their people for peace, justice, and security for all. PM Gonsalves noted that St. Vincent and the Grenadines wanted to put forward the matter of its leadership of CELAC since 2021.
Because we were at a strategic, and we are at a strategic juncture in global affairs and in hemispheric affairs. And we believe that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, within the context of a CARICOM candidacy, that we have a very special role to play. And there is this, globalization is still out at play with neoliberalism, but there's some retreat, and there's a greater emphasis on regionalization. It is important for us to be recognized in this and be part of the leadership, because we possess the experience to help to shape regional institutions, those to which we belong. And particularly so with CARICOM being 50 years this year. In July, CARICOM will be 50 years old. We must not miss these things. They teach it about CARICOM, but they have to teach it about CELAC as a whole. And they must be able to rattle off these statistics and understand the meaning. We have to know. We have to know these countries. They are our neighbors. This year is not only the year in leadership in CELAC, is in part to the transformation of our education.
Noting that CELAC has just over 8% of the world's population with over 650 million people in its member states, Prime Minister Dr. Afghan Salv said Mexico and Argentina, which were the previous countries that held the presidency of CELAC, have done excellent work in laying the foundation for SVG to build on.
In addition to issues which Giselle spoke about, and you'll see the issues which are there, I want to see if we can build the institutional base of CELAC. I had a discussion with Alberto Fernandez about it. I had a bilateral with him on some issues. And we're going to continue the work which he been doing in that regard. Because you see, the CELAC has a shared experience, but that shared experience must be consolidated in an articulated institutional expression. And it's not a supranational organization. We have to do things by way of intergovernmental agreement. But under our watch, I want us to strengthen and to have grown the institutional expression of the shared experiences of CELAC and the articulated outcomes which we have, so that the institutional expression could to make those things happen, that we only don't talk about them, we make them happen, at least those which we consider to be critical.
Noting that SVG will benefit tremendously from holding the presidency of CELAC, Prime Minister Dr. Afghan Salv said a rented building at French's will house the Secretariat of CELAC, and that he intends to meet with all of the permanent secretaries next week to outline the agenda for the organization under SVG's leadership. In other news now, in light of discussions surrounding pension reform, Executive Director of the National Insurance Services, the NIS, Stuart Haynes, has made it clear that he doesn't foresee any changes at this time in the retirement age for most Vincentians, which now stands at 65. Haynes clarified that the issue during an interview on NBC Radio's face-to-face program yesterday.
The retirement ages is done in a scientific approach. As an actuary, basically what you look at the life expectancy, and if you see the life expectancy is increasing, then typically the retirement age tend to increase. But in terms of with the medium to short term, we're not seeing retirement age past 65. I heard people informing me that NIS pension age going to 70. That's not true. I mean, at the end of the day, we reform in 2014 and we set it at 65. It will remain 65, right? The question is whether, and it's 65 at 2028. What you could do in one of the reform measures, speed up the time when you reach 65. We could say 2026 instead of 2028. Those are the measures typically I would see around the retirement age. I mean, and it's consistent with regards to the region. I mean, the average retirement age in the region is 65. Most plan. One of the challenges with us in the region is that we don't have what we call life tables. These are tables that determine the mortality of our population because of our smallness and also lack of data. But we've done some work, the Caribbean Actuarial Association, with the Society of Actuaries in the US, where we're trying to develop the Caribbean life tables so that we can get better estimate around how long life expectancy at birth and life expectancy at retirement. But as far as these reform measures, it's 65 for now. I mean, I can't talk about the future, but I believe 65, based on my personal judgment, would be there for a while.
Discussing the work of actuaries and the country's demographics, Haynes said that the population of SVG is projected to decline, and the age at which means that there will be a larger proportion of persons 65 and over compared to those of working age and children.
Statistics we typically use the life expectancy table from the United Kingdom. And what we'll do is historically get the number of deaths and births from your local statistical office or registry. Then you look at the historical pattern of deaths and birth, and you kind of do some projection relative to the UK life tables, but it somewhat reflect the Caribbean sort of realities. So that is how we estimate with regards to the demographics, like the life expectancy. A challenge for us is also the fertility rate in terms of number of live births. It's declining. I mean, in the 70s it used to be 5, and I think now it's declining to almost 2. So that is a concern, and that is why our population is falling. Also, another important factor which we are challenged in the region is immigration. I mean, what we have to do is really crude estimate around immigration, because our statistics on immigration through the region needs improvement. So we generally have to do some rough estimate of migration, but we can see it that the migration among the working sort of a population is sort of a brain-drain issue, because what is happening is that this issue of population aging is facing all of us globally. UK, Canada, and the US. And if I point to Canada, they softening their immigration policies, they targeting young professionals and so forth, providing economic opportunities. Then you have persons from Latin America and the Caribbean moving, creating a further challenge for our population aging. So, I mean, those are how actuaries typically get an estimate around that. But what we do is that the review is done every sort of 3 years. So the projection is done over a 60-year period and the 75-year period. So we also do a review every 3 years, and every 3 years you would assess in terms of the quality of your estimate. It's called in our term the gain loss. So
in terms of payment to the NIS and whether someone will lose what they put in if they migrate, Haynes says an important aspect of Social Security is that you never lose what you put in.
If you migrate to another CARICOM island.
That's not CARICOM.
Okay. If you migrate to the US, for instance, we'll encourage you to join the voluntary contribution. But if you choose not to, upon turning age 65, then what you can do, come to the NIS and you get a grant. So you don't lose it, you get a grant. And hopefully when you go to the States, you work and contribute to the Social Security. So when you combine, at least there's something decent for your retirement. But it's important to mention that if you go, for instance, in the Caribbean, what would happen is that when you reach retirement age, they would look at how much you contribute in St. Vincent, how much you contribute in Barbados, you totalize and you determine your pension. So you move, but you don't lose in the region. That is what we call the CARICOM reciprocal agreement. And we have an agreement with Canada as well, where we totalize.
So you have a working relationship with other social security providers in the region.
Yes.
Right. So if you're a skilled person moving from island to island within the CARICOM labor force, and you want to, continue to receive those benefits, you can make that happen and continue to receive those benefits outside of the geographical location of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's part, a critical component of the CSME. Move and don't lose under Social Security.
Over $100 million worth of work will be done on the port modernization project this year. This is according to Finance Minister Camila Gonsalves, who on a recent appearance on the API's morning SVG program said the port project is still on schedule to be completed around 2025, with a lot of the work this year involving land reclamation.
Building the port on the coast as it exists. You're going to reclaim a lot of land out into the sea and build the buildings on the reclaimed land. So what that means is you're going to have to build a sort of you have to drive piles and build a sort of a wall out into the sea, and then fill that enclosed area with soil and sand and build on top of that. And that work is a big part of the work that's going to happen this year. That land reclamation will be completed this year. So we're going to add a few acres of land going out into the sea, and that land is where we're going to build our administrative buildings and our warehouses and all the rest of it. That work will begin this year as well. And then we're going to realign some of the roads so that those big container trucks that'll have to come in and out of the port won't be driving, past everybody's house. So there's going to be some road realignment. And then a lot of the property that's down in that sort of Bottom Town Rose Place area is owned by the government. And we're going to beautify and upgrade and revitalize that side of Kingstown by spending a little money on our properties, our government properties, and encouraging the private sector to do the same in their areas. And then you're going to see this year the framework, the steel frames of all of those buildings being erected. Your administrative complex, your warehouses, your storage areas, your machine areas. You're going to start to see sort of a village of steel frames being erected. And then next year, you'll see the frames being filled in by bricks and mortar.
Minister Gonsalves also spoke of other work that will be undertaken to accommodate more cruise ships.
The cruise port that was built originally by a previous government did not take expansion into account. It was built to accommodate one cruise ship. And that's what it does. And as cruise ships have gotten bigger, it can barely accommodate one cruise ship. What we're going to do when we build the cargo port in Rose Place is turn that area in Kingstown that currently accommodates 2 big cargo ships into an expansion and extension of our cruise berth. So we'll be able to take 2 more ships where the cargo ships currently pull up. So we'll be able to go from 1 ship to 3 ships. And we're not going to get to 4 that Barbados and Antigua have. I think St. Kitts has 3 as well. But we're going to triple. We're going to triple our space for cruise ships. And then all of that real estate that exists out at the Kingstown port, where you currently have your geese shed and where you currently have your customs building and all the rest of it. All of that is going to become a village for tourism. But we're going to turn that entire area into an area that accommodates and attends to cruise tourism. And that doesn't just mean making the cruise passenger comfortable. That means creating more space for us and particularly our cultural and entertainers and artisans to have events there to entertain people. That we want to begin some of that this year at the existing cruise berth to make sure that entertainers and artisans and performers have a greater exposure and that the cruise passengers have greater exposure to our artisans.
The Port Modernization Project is one of the largest capital projects to be undertaken in the country. Opposition leader Dr. Godwin Friday is again appealing to the government to put policies in place to address homicides and other crime and criminal activities in the country, noting that the violence that is present touched him personally with the killing of his cousin Frankie Gooding in Beckwith last Saturday. On the New Times program on Monday, Dr. Friday said the 60-year-old businessman was gunned down in execution style.
You feel it more keenly, but it's something that I know that we've been dealing with throughout this country and we have been speaking about, that something needs to be done. People have to get the assurance from government that they understand that this is a problem that can be addressed, it can be tackled, if they are proactive about it and if they feel that there is something that can be done. But if you think there is nothing that can be done, then get out of the way. In this community over the last weekend, on Thursday night, there was a stabbing. A young woman went home from work and was waylaid by someone who stabbed her, and she wound up in intensive care in the hospital in Kingstown. That happened on Thursday night. On Friday, there was another stabbing in this community here, in a bar in Oka area, Hamilton. That person had to be rushed to hospital in Kingstown. And then on Saturday, the execution-style gunning down of a businessman, a family man, at his home, his business place in this community.
The opposition leader noted that the people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are becoming more fearful for their lives.
It is a terrible tragedy to have occurred here in this community, or any community in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to anyone, to any family. And we talk about crime and violence in this country over and over again that is creating fear amongst our people, that you cannot be safe. You cannot feel safe in your own home. You cannot feel safe in your property. You cannot feel safe on the street of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is the pervading fear throughout this country. A cousin of mine called me last night to to extend the condolences and to express her fear and to say that basically she locks her doors, her windows. She's afraid in her own home here in Bequia. How did we get to this point? We speak about crime and violence as though it is something that is for other persons, that it's somewhere off in the distance. But we have warned over and over again, it's not just a group of a few bad elements that are doing certain things. This comes right home to you. It has to me and my family over the weekend. And other families throughout this country have been moaning and crying weekend after weekend about this terrible blight that is plaguing our country.
Meanwhile, at a welcome ceremony today at the Argyle International Airport, Prime Minister Dr. Afghan Salves extended condolences to the Gooding family, including the opposition leader. Meanwhile, Dr. Godwin Friday expressed sympathy to the Nadine Davis, whose 3-year-old son, Raiden, died after a protracted illness that galvanized the nation. The child died last Wednesday after 3 months at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital.
Out to Nadine Davis for the loss of her son, Raiden, a beautiful young child. You want to make sure that you have the best care that you can give to that child and that you've done your best for them. And I could understand her frustration when she goes to the hospital and can't figure out what is happening to her child. And she feels that she's not getting answers because the authorities are not providing them in the way that she understands them on a timely basis. And this washing of hands, that somehow it doesn't come down to the failures of administration in this healthcare system in this country. It just will not satisfy the public demand for accountability and for a proper explanation as to what happened in the case of that child. I'm glad that she has spoken out about it, because too many times people die quietly and it's brushed aside because within the family there's always questions about what could have been done in the system better, but nobody listens. In this case, it has galvanized public attention, and my heart goes out to her, to the family, for their loss.
The opposition leader said initiatives and programs that are easy to access should be in place to assist persons financially challenged and battling illnesses that need special attention in another country.
And that the system of transparency and accountability have to be in place so that persons who are affected by serious health conditions that require specialist attention or overseas attention, that there is a procedure that we know how to access it. You can't just go to somebody's office, whether it's the Prime Minister or somebody else, and beg for favor. That is not how it works. That's not how it should work. Maybe that's how it does now. People have to be able to know that there's an illness, especially a life-threatening illness, to somebody in the family or a young child in this case. What is the procedure? How do we go about it? What is the feedback? How do I respond? Treat me with respect and let me know what is happening and what we can expect to happen. That is what should be in place. And again, at this stage, I want to express my deepest sympathy and love and caring for that family, for their loss. And I trust that their courage in coming out and speaking about it would help to motivate change in this system of ours that is so badly broken.
The police here are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of Randolph Carlos James, a 66-year-old farmer of Cedars. The police say investigations reveal that on January 19, 2023, James's body was discovered with injuries to the head. A postmortem examination of the deceased revealed that he died as a result of blunt force trauma. Persons with information that can assist with the investigation are encouraged to contact the police. James's death marks the third homicide for 2023. In other news, the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Transformation and Forestry and Fisheries is said to be working on strengthening initiatives to address predial larceny in SVG. This is according to Minister Saboto Caesar, who on NBC Radio's Face-to-Face program today noted that predial larceny is one of the many challenges that farmers are concerned with and was raised during meetings across 8 farming constituencies.
I could remember when we drafted the legislation and we went around throughout the country, we had the consultations, and there are some very detailed things that must take place in order for the legislation to be fully operationalized. And for farmers who are listening, for farm workers who are following, for the truckers who are transporting produce from point A to point B, in 2023, this year, we are going to ensure that we follow the law closely. It means that the farmers, you have to have your receipt books, persons who are willing to sell to the different supermarkets. You have to make sure that your farmer's ID is in place and is intact, and it's a valid ID.
Minister Caesar said this year the ministry will implement tagging systems for animals.
Because we are going to step up on the stopping and the searching of vehicles transporting produce on a weekend throughout the week. We are going to also work to address the issue of the tagging of animals. So that area is one of the vexing issues addressed in several of the meetings, and farmers were advised that you have to work closer in networks so that you can be your brother's keeper. And we are going to work with the police to ensure that we can begin to address this problem early in 2023 in a very meaningful way.
And the SVG police force is asking the public to cease with immediate effect the tethering of animals on the tarmac and surrounding areas of the Joshua Center. The police say failure to comply with this order may result in animals being dealt with in accordance with the Stock Trespass Act, Chapter 70 of the revised edition of the Laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines 2009. This act, among other things, gives authority to the police to destroy animals that are causing injury to property.